You were created to make a sound, not just to echo the noise. Welcome to the Amplified Era podcast. I am your host, Nadia Morris. I am here to help you push past the fear, identify the silence, and birth the purpose you've been carrying. We are leaving the safety of the shadows and stepping into the spotlight of your destiny. This is season 1, The Great Unmuzzling. So if you are ready to take the mute button of your life, let's get to work. Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Amplified Era podcast. We are in phase 3, and can you believe that we are almost wrapping season 1 already? So today we want to talk about moving from broken to blooming. And what are we going to talk about today? We are talking about authority without identity and how dangerous that is for a leader. So today we want to cement your identity, how you find yourself in God, and becoming whole before you even enter the structure that you have planned. So get ready. It is gonna be a time today. All right, so you have a plan. You went through phases 1 and 2 of this podcast. You found your voice. You secured your environment. You cleaned out your delivery room, and now you are literally being positioned into the boardroom of your destiny. But there is something that is keeping you awake at night. There's a silent threat that if you don't address it, it is going to become a problem later down. Because many of us, especially women, there are many fragmented pieces, a collection of fragmented pieces within us, where you are functioning on the outside, but you are fracturing on the inside. And if you are not careful, when you ascend to leadership, it normally intensifies what is broken and what needs to be fixed. So you're going to feel terrified when the pressure of leadership gets too heavy, and then what is left are the fractures that you have hidden all this time. It will cause your structure to collapse. So today, welcome to episode 11, Broken to Blooming. And we are kind of stopping the construction for a little bit. And we're going to start looking at foundation repair that you require, because many of us, whether we like to know it or not, we need inner healing in order to be successful. Because you can be successful and still be bleeding. And we have to fix that before you step into any other deep construction phase of your life, right? And it's funny because I am now in another phase of writing, and what I've been dealing with for the past few weeks, I would say for the past few months, it is very telling, and I will get deeper into why I had to walk through certain things before I could have sat into the office of executive director. So what I want to talk about in this first segment is you can be a functional yet fractured CEO. Right? And sometimes we mistake high achievement for wholeness, and that is not the case. Right? And so high achievers, in my mind, they are expert at surface level acting. right? We call them contortionists. And you can run a meeting, run a company, run a boardroom, pitch ideas, but still you carry wounds, wounds from your past, wounds of rejection, and limitations that if you have not addressed those mindsets, it rattles you as a leader. And so, what I am noticing also in my research for writing what I'm about to launch is that women leaders, we are expected to one overperform. We are expected to carry this emotional burden, this labor, where you have to mentor, you have to, you know, be careful of how you react to certain things. You're expected to be a nurturer in the workspace. And so, being a woman leader, I've noticed is that there is a cost and there's a burden that comes when you ascend into leadership. And I am telling you, if you're not careful, you can be functional, fragmented. And so what you do, you compartmentalize what you do at work and the pain that you are dealing with, whatever wounds that you're dealing with. And so nobody knows that you're hurting and nobody knows that you're going through so much, but it does eventually manifest in how you deal with people. And so you find that because some of us have so many wounds, mother wounds, father wounds, and there is when you're competent in what you do and when you ascend to certain levels, there is a need to maintain a level that you're always on, I would say. And so you need to maintain that level at all times. And so what you're gonna do is sort of like cut aside or cut yourselves in parts then to be able to fit into what or the area that you are. But that is just really performative because you're really performing. And when you're not healed, you really cannot walk in purpose. You are not producing, and your purpose is about just being. And so you find a lot of persons don't thrive in leadership in workspaces because everybody comes to the workspace with some type of wound, some type of trauma, something that they've been through, and then you all come into this large melting pot in one space, and that is not always the best thing. So what we're trying to move away from is being leaders who are so fragmented and just performing, and you really cannot impact in that way because it's really just, as I said, about producing and not performing. And so it is so important that we don't enter leadership thinking that the title is going to validate us. Some of us enter leadership thinking, you know, when you arrive at this place, that you have arrived and it is going to validate you. But when you don't have the authority that God has given you, what you put yourself into is for you to be exposed. There's a level of exposure that happens when you don't know who you are, when your identity is not fixed in Christ. Because the thing is about identity, your identity is not what you do, it is who you are in God. And a lot of us miss it. So we have to cement our identity before we step into authority. And that is why many of us run away from doing this inner work, because it means that you have to sit with yourself, you have to analyze yourself, you have to recognize where you fall short, and then do the work to fix what needs to be fixed. But many of us don't want to do that. We think that because we are at a certain level and we've reached to a certain point, that is all that is going to validate you. But when you take away the title of leader, of CEO, of preacher, of pastor, of prophet, of CEO, what is left of you, right? And you have to look at David as well. Before he was king, his identity alone was about developing intimacy with God. He was a shepherd, but his identity was rooted in developing intimacy with God. And therefore, the confidence came, and then that confidence that he gained because he was in the presence of his father, he was able to kill lions and bears. So he wasn't really trying to earn Saul's approval. He was just operating from his established identity. And the question I want you to ask yourself today is, what is the established identity through which I am operating right now? Right? And some of us, if you're not careful, when you get to the space where you're elevated and promoted, that is not the time to forget that God got you there. Right? And many of us run into this trap and this pit where you get busy, life is gonna get busy, and so that is why sometimes God does not elevate some of us, because he knows that whenever we step into certain spaces, we are not going to remember who and why we got there. And so for me personally, what I have to do, I have to sit at the foot of Jesus, because most of my prayers, even when it's not a long prayer, I'm like, Lord, I'm asking you to give me a strategy to be able to know how to run this organization the way it should be run. Give me the strategy. You placed me here. Tell me what you want to have done. And you find out when you are open to partner with God, that is when the success comes. Because you cannot do anything of your own self, because when you do that, the pitfalls are there. So you have to put God first and find yourself in God. Because if you don't know who you are in him before you step into a role, then your leadership is going to become like a search for validation. Your authority without identity is going to be so dangerous, because you're going to start using people, you're going to start competing with other people, and you're going to seek control instead of ways in which you can make impact. So when you're so focused on the validation, you don't make room to see how you can impact those around you. Because whether you like it or not, when you are elevated into leadership, it's not about you, it's not about the increased salary, it's about the lives that you impact once you have sat in that seat. It's not about you. Let me say it again. It's not about you. When you sit in a seat of leadership, it's not about what you like and what you don't like. And so many of us are going through difficult seasons in our jobs in corporate, because the expectation and the reality is that, okay, I have now assumed this role, so therefore I have arrived. And that is what psychologists call the arrival fallacy, because what you're looking for is your next fix, is your next milestone, is your next goal that you're going to conquer. But when you understand that God has placed you in this space, you will start to understand, look for ways in which you can impact the lives of people around you, right? And so you have to be careful that we don't slip into a mode where we are selfishly looking out for ourselves in terms of what we can gain, but you are there to show other people how God can work through you, how God can move through you, that you show them the God that you serve. You don't have to testify, and you don't have to talk about it 24/7. The way that you live your life and how you carry yourself is how people know that this lady, this man serves the God of the Bible. All right? And so I want to take you through this book that I wrote. And I thought I was just writing this book to launch at my first Beauty for Ashes conference. It's called Becoming Whole, or God Mended the Shattered and Broken Pieces of Me. So I want to bridge that gap between being called and being healed for the calling. And this is what I walked through when I documented this book. I know what it feels like to be a high performer, successful on paper, but you feel as though you're carrying around a stack of fragmented pieces in your body, and you're just terrified that anybody any day now will see it. So becoming whole isn't just about my story. It's really a story of transformation, about personal growth, about resilience, about healing. And it's really like a blueprint for a fusion to within this process that you need. It's not about pretending that you're not broken. It's about bringing every piece, the past rejection, the family dysfunction. The book that was written is really to show how you need to address the certain mend what is broken in you. And what we have to understand is that healing is a prerequisite for sustained leadership. There is no way that you can be a leader and not be healed. So it's like how in university you have certain courses that you can elect. They're electives. You can choose whether you want to do them or not. In this case, leadership, healing is a must. So you must give God access to those fractures to be able to heal you, because whole people can build whole vision. So I want to take you through what I had to go through and write as I did this book. All right. So first of all, there is a point where you have to acknowledge that there is something wrong with you, that you want to be made whole. That was the first chapter, where you have to now dig and to see that you are broken and you need to face some things about yourself and be healed. So what the first chapter dealt with is how the man at the pool of Bethesda, how he complained that there was nobody to put him in the water, and Jesus simply asked him, do you want to be made whole? And he said yes. And so sometimes you have to look into yourself and really acknowledge that you're really not at the place that you need to be. You're not at the place that you need to be. And I even broke it down even more, that what does brokenness look like? Brokenness is gonna look like going back into your childhood to understand where these uncomfortable emotions started. You have to go through and to assess what is it costing me to remain broken, and you have to know, say, okay, how can I solve this issue that I am dealing with? So you have to go back to the root of your brokenness and deal with the emotions and the feelings and the issues, the root causes, because sometimes what we're dealing with is the symptoms of our brokenness. And you, as you can know, like for example, if you had a broken bone and you don't know that it's broken, it's going to manifest as swelling, tenderness, pain in the area. But you will have to know spiritually that there is something wrong with me and I need to remove the hindrance in order to move in fullness and in wholeness. And what does that look like? You have to go in front of the mirror and you have to look at yourself in the mirror and to say, mirror, mirror on the wall, and list the ugly truths about yourself. Sometimes you have to look in the mirror and analyze that sometimes you are the villain in your own story. Nobody else is the villain. You are the villain. You are the one who needs to adjust your attitude. You're the one who needs healing. And sometimes you are the villain in your story. So that is chapter 3. Chapter 4 talks about forgiveness. and forgiving those who broke you. And many of us, why we have such a difficult time dealing and thriving and stewarding the seasons that God is trying to bring us to, is that you have a lot of unforgiveness and a lot of bitterness. And so, even in the workplace, how does that manifest? And I've seen it where you have persons who are dealing with some serious wounds relating to fathers and mothers. And so, they have a difficulty submitting to leadership. They have a difficulty submitting to authority. And so when you enter into a workspace and you are dealing with your leaders as if, who are you to talk to me? Yes, that kind of feel away and that stings, but that is showing you that you have to step back, look into yourself, and start to acknowledge that you have a right. Yes, you have a right. Yes, you can do what you think you want to do, but it comes off differently for other people. And I know a lot of Christians in the workspace, they believe that because they serve God, they are always in the right, not knowing that sometimes the attitudes and the behaviors that they project, it is unbecoming of a Christian, right? So you have to learn to forgive people and let go of bitterness, because sometimes you're gonna be spoken to harshly. You're gonna have appraisals. You're gonna have discussions about behavior. You're gonna have discussions about how you're acting, how your work is, and if you take it personally, I'm so sorry. So sometimes you have to learn to forgive and let go and move on and do your work, right? The other part, chapter 5, is forgiving yourself, because sometimes when we realize that the root of the brokenness is because what we've allowed to take place and what we've allowed to happen over time, it is hard to now forgive ourselves for what we allowed. And chapter 6 deals with on the potter's wheel, trying to fix yourself, because after you've gone through this process of seeing who you are, understanding the root of your brokenness, you are going to try to fix yourself. And the aim is not to fix yourself. You have to allow the potter, you have to sit on the potter's wheel. And so even as God is processing you into the calling, yes, he has called you, and he has desire to elevate you, but there is a process where he's gonna take you through to ensure that you are purified. And you know the purifying properties of clay, we know it. And so that is why it is always mentioned so much in the Bible. The clay has purifying properties, and sometimes when you're on the wheel and when you feel as if this is it now, and the clay and the pot spoil, God is saying, no, allow me to do what I need to do in you to heal you, to come to a place where you can thrive. And when you step into leadership, you are not exposed. And so some of us are struggling because we have yet to do the inner healing that is necessary to fully occupy our leadership roles. And I just want to leave you with this before I go to the purpose corner, is when you arrive at wherever God has commissioned you to be, you are going to go through another process of learning about yourself. And I had to learn that very quickly, where I had to separate from, you are validated by God and you are called by God to sit in this space, to know removing what people think about you, what people say about your leadership. You have to remove yourself from that, because why? You're not gonna please everybody. But once you understand that God has called you and God has placed you in this space, game over. So you stop trying to internalize what people are saying or what people think about you, and then you have to go back to what has God said. And I've had to dig a little deeper for these almost two years. In May it's gonna be 2 years since I've been in that space. I've had to go back to. God commissioned me to be here. God authorized me to be here. And that is the problem that many of us also face, is that somebody else may think that you're not suitable or fit for the role, but it's not about your suitability or being fit for the role. It's about whether you can carry out what God requires in that space. And so sometimes you find that God is going to uproot and remove. Remember, like Esther and Vashti? Yes, God is going to remove and replace because He desires to do certain things in that space. And sometimes it's only His chosen and as beloved that He's going to elevate to do that, because He can trust them to do what He requires in the space that He's calling them to. So yeah, we talked about it, that you need to go get your inner healing before you seek to be promoted into leadership. Because when you expect God to promote scars, open wounds, not even scars, open wounds, you have not dealt with your own identity, you are going to bleed on people when you are elevated. That's just a plain, simple fact. If you don't heal, you're going to bleed on people when you step further into leadership. So, in the Purpose Corner today, I want to talk about the process of blooming. And I went through the theme for this year is time to bloom, and how do you transition from broken to whole. And I want to just say this, that you cannot rush the mending process, you cannot rush the healing process. And what I found is that healing is not linear. Healing takes time. It's gonna be you thinking that you have gotten over certain things, and then something happens to trigger you, and then you're gonna wonder, why wasn't I healed? But yeah, it's gonna be like a circular process, and it's just for you to say, okay, when that happens, God, I can't rely on myself anymore. And so what God does, He has to break you from your self-reliance. You rely on performance and achievement, and so He has to break you away from that before He can build you up in Him. And so many of us, the process of blooming has been difficult because you think that what you desire should have happened a long time ago, or where God has placed you, it is not what it has cut out to be. And let me tell you, you're going to be stretched. And God knows you have the capacity to occupy the space. But when you get to the space, it is a different kind of training that you're going to be involved in. So yes, it is difficult, and you're wondering if it made sense for you to step into this space, but God is using that same step as another step to another level. All right. And so what I want to leave with you is that when you plant a seed, it doesn't just become a flower, right? First you have to till the soil, you have to plant the seed, and it has to break down in the soil, right? When you plant a seed, it has to break down in the soil in order for the growth to start. And so what God is doing is that He's taking all of those fragmented pieces of you, and He's now applying the healing cement that you need, which is His word. That's why you have to be so steadfast in the word of God, in His unconditional love for you, because if you don't have that as your center, even as a leader, you will be tossed to and fro, because you're gonna wonder, no, Lord, my identity is not cemented in you. Because if you're not in the word, and if you're not sitting in God's love, then you're going to realize that your identity is not derived from what you build. It is really whose you are, right? And so it cannot bloom from a broken seed. That is what I want you to take away this week. You simply cannot bloom from a broken seed. So you have to be healed. And so, in summary, because we've been here for a while, wholeness is not optional for leadership. It is mandatory. Say it with me. Wholeness is not optional for leadership. It is mandatory. And authority is dangerous without an established identity in God. If you're not established in God, you're going to have a problem when you ascend to leadership, when decisions need to be made and your integrity comes into question. You have to know whose you are and who you are, so that you're not swayed by emotion and by every other doctrine and wind, right? So your homework for this week is to identify one broken piece. Yes, not say pieces, one broken piece, whether it's your past wound limitation or that recurring fear that you have been hiding behind your success. You have been hiding behind it because of your success. The success I hide behind the wound and it's hiding behind the limitation. But I want you to start pushing it away and bringing it to light. Stop hiding, please. Stop hiding behind your success and start to bring things to light, because if you cannot bring it to God, it cannot be mended. So I want you to identify that wound, that past limitation. Sometimes it's your mindset, because can I tell you that even when you step into the space, you have to know adjust to the authority that you carry. And some of us are still behaving as if we are still at entry level when God has elevated you and promoted you. Let me just leave that there. And sometimes you just have to move past the mindset that you're not worthy and that you're not called and that you're not chosen. You need to move past that mindset and allow God to mend it. So if that is you, I want you to identify it and bring it before God and then find ways to deal with it. All right? And if you're ready to walk this journey with me, you can secure a copy of my book. I have copies here in Jamaica. You can order from nadiathepurposemidwife.com. It's also available on Amazon if you are located overseas, so you will have it shipped directly to you if you're not in Jamaica. So it's Becoming Whole, How God Mended the Shattered and Broken Pieces of Me by Nadia Morris. So you can grab that book because it's time to mend your foundations. And next week is the season finale. So once your identity is cemented and you're in the boardroom now, season finale, episode 12, is going to be talking about your permission slip, the authorization that you think you need. But the trick is, the twist is, I'm going to have a guest with me next week to close out the program. So I am Nadia Morris, your Purpose Midwife, and I would love for you to join me in the season finale as we close out the Amplified Era podcast. See you next time. Bye. Thank you for stepping into the Amplified Ear with me today. If this episode sparked a fire in you, don't let it burn out. The best way to support this movement is to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a woman who is ready to find her voice. You can connect with me on social media at Nadia the Purpose Midwife to keep the conversation going. And remember, the muzzle is off, the silence is broken, and you have permission to take up space. Until next time, keep blooming.